Yeah. Turn those over to Pastor Joe here. Okay, there's some vocabulary on 169. Say the word after me. Apodidomi.
Apodidomi.
I give back, render, reward. Didomi.
Didomi.
I give, I grant. So you can see that didomi is the base word there, and apodidomi is a compound word with apa on the front of it, the preposition apa on the front of it. So I give, apodidomi, I give back, or reward. Etos.
Etos.
Year. Euthus. Immediately at once then. Megos.
Megos.
And of course the feminine is megale, and mega is the neuter. Not hard to figure out what that means. Paradidomi. I hand over, I betray. Palus. Palus, pale, palu means much or many. Presbyteros. Older or elder. And that's where we get Presbyterian or presbyter. Right? What do you think the ecclesiastical structure of the Presbyterian church is? Elder rule, right. All right. Where do you think the Episcopal Church gets its name? Episcopos, which means what?
Overseer.
Bishop or overseer. So the Episcopal Church and others like it are going to have bishops. However, it seems to me that elders and overseers are pretty similar in Scripture. All right, kara. Joy, delight. Chronos. Time. Okay, me verbs. Me verbs are the same as omega verbs in meaning, of course. We still have the same sort of setup. We still have the same tense setup, tense, voice, mood, parsing, all that kind of stuff. You just have a different set of endings to work with, at least to some extent. All right. Principal parts of didomi, for example. Didomi, present. Doso, future. Edoka, kappa first aorist there, right? Dedoka, perfect. Dedamai, perfect middle passive. The other perfect's active, of course. And edathane, aorist passive, future passive. All right. Now, this book does a pretty good job of telling you what it is with me verbs. You need to know what the tense of a me verb is, and you can usually determine that fairly easily with most of them by looking at the reduplication. The other thing about me verbs is they're reduplicated in the present tense as well as the perfect tense. You can see didomi. The stem of didomi is delta, omicron, da, right? So in the present tense, me verbs are reduplicated, but they're reduplicated with an iota. We're used to reduplication with an epsilon, all right? But these are reduplicated with an iota in the present tense. In the perfect tense, they're reduplicated with an epsilon. So you see the did reduplication in the present. You see dead reduplication in the perfect. When we get to tithemi, we see a tith reduplication. Remember reduplication if the word starts with something like a theta, an aspirated consonant, you don't reduplicate the aspirated form of the consonant, you reduplicate the unaspirated form. Because who wants to go around saying thithemi, right? So it's tithemi, and so tith reduplication with an iota in the present, and teth reduplication in the perfect. No reduplication in the aoristic tenses. Now, what are the aoristic tenses? Well, aorist, but also future. Future is aoristic in its actiansart, or kind of action, isn't it? All right. So you'll see in the principal parts of didomi, you have an iota reduplication in the present. So if you saw an imperfect, that would also have an iota reduplication. which would make it quite obvious that it's not an aorist because we have the iota reduplication. It would have an augment on the front of that. Ed did, right? So, in a me verb, whenever you see an iota reduplication, present system, present or imperfect. And imperfect is pretty rare in the me verbs, in my experience at least. So you're probably looking at a present tense. You see an epsilon reduplication, dead or teth, right? Then you're looking at a perfect tense verb. If you see no reduplication, it is an aorist or a future. And as the book points out, if you're outside the indicative mood, then it's almost certainly an aorist tense. Okay? It's pretty easy to tell because by then the future endings are very recognizable. So you doso, what do you think those endings are going to be? So, say, right? Kappa first aorist, so edo ka, so you have ka, kos, ka, kamen, kate, kan in the kappa first aorist. In the perfect, you would end up with ka, kos, ke, kamen, kate, kasi, or maybe kan. So endings very similar. How do you tell the difference between a perfect and an aorist then in a kappa first aorist? Reduplication. And so what's going to tell you the difference? What? Perfect's going to have what? What kind? Epsilon reduplication. Aorist is going to have what? Epsilon augment in the indicative, yes. Outside the indicative, no augment and no reduplication. But there's no reduplication of any sort with the aoristic tenses, so that's how you tell the difference. So anytime you see a me verb and you see that epsilon reduplication, you know you have a perfect tense going. Anytime you see a me verb and you have an iota kind of reduplication, you know that you have a present tense, a present system, present tense or imperfect. If there's no reduplication, you know you have a future, but you'll see future endings, it'll be very obvious. Or if it doesn't look like a future ending, it'll be an aorist of some sort, aorist active or middle or aorist passive. Right, any questions on that? So really, you need to know the endings for the present active indicative of me verbs. And you see that in the middle of page 170, you see a paradigm of didomi. In the paragraph below, if you want to see just the endings on the second line near the beginning, you see missi, mente, asi, missi, mente, asi, missi, mente, asi. So you need to memorize that. Put a star by that. Memorize those endings. Missi, mente, asi. That's kind of like the sigma, as, s, on, c, as. What ending did I just give you? Sigma, as, s, on, c, as. Third declension, okay, these are kind of like that. Missi, mente, asi. And you notice they're like it because the third declension, we don't have coupling vowels for those endings like we're used to. As, u, o, on, those have coupling vowels, right? Now these don't have coupling vowels necessarily either, so they're kind of odd endings to learn. But if you just remember missi, mente, asi, then you got to remember what missi means. Mitz, si, men, te, asi. That gives you your endings for the third declension. Once you learn those, the rest are fairly easy. You look at the present active subjunctive. You simply have o, ace with an eta, a, omen, eta, osi, but the stem of didomi is delta omicron, so the omicron is contracting with the ending, and when that happens, you get dido, didos, dido, didomen, dido, didosi. It sounds a little bit poetic, doesn't it? You see how that works? You may not see how that works. Take your regular subjunctive endings and contract them with an omicron, and you may want to do as I have done, put a little dog ear on page 124, which gives you your contraction chart. So in the subjunctive endings, we either have an omega or an eta contracting with an omicron. What do you get when you have an eta and an omicron contracting? What do you get when you have an omega and anything contracting? Omega. So instead of O, ace, A, we're getting O, os, O. Right? And throw in the iota subscript just for good measure. Right? If it's if we remember it being in the present indicative, O, ace, epsilon, iota, and it goes iota subscript with the eta iota subscript, and when that contracts to an omega, it carries over the iota subscript. That's where that's coming from, right? But those are basically subjunctive endings, and that's not very hard to recognize or deal with. Same thing with the imperative. We're used to eto, ete, etoson. Well, what happened with the omicron and the epsilon? It becomes u because it contracts, which is a little confusing because, you know, that reminds us of the middle passive imperative endings, but I suppose we'll get over it. Participle, that's pretty similar. The masculine nominative singular is weird, deduce, right? But you should be able to deduce it, I think. Infinitive, didunai. Now look at didunai. Now nai kind of looks like an infinitive ending, doesn't it? As I remember them, ain, esthai, sai, sasthai, thenai. Ain, esthai, sai, sasthai, thenai. So that alpha iota diphthong is very infinitive-ish, isn't it? Okay, but not present active infinitive, right? Not present active infinitive. But how do we know this is present active, or at least present infinitive? Did, don, nigh. Reduplication with the iota. So you got to know that, right? Every time I see reduplication with an iota, it's in the present system. Every time I see reduplication with an epsilon, it's in the perfect tense. Okay? So there you go. Aorist, active of didomi. Again, kappa first aorist. Edoka. Edokos. Well, you know, I'm remembering my sa, se, ka, kos, ke, and if you know those, it's not going to be hard to figure out the person and number. And I know it's aorist because there is not reduplication. So, you know, I know those are active endings. Aorist middle endings, you know, what? Main, u, eta, amates, anta, doesn't look like that. Thane, they, stay, thane, theta, they, son, doesn't look like that. There's no theta, that would be aorist passive, right? So by deduction, it's not all that difficult. If you remember, no reduplication, aorist. Now, if it were future, because there's no reduplication, that would look like a typical future ending, which I don't have, right? So it's not really all that difficult. If you remember, missi menta asi, what are those endings? Say them. Missi menta asi. If you remember that, you pretty much have it nailed. It's not very difficult, really. This is special. Chairman of the board, an elder.
Oh, take it.
Excuse me.
Would you like me to pause the tape?
Hello? How you doing? Now, where were we? 202. All right, so is anybody seeing any problems here? Look at the aorist subjunctive down there. Kind of a short word, eh? Do, dos, do, domen, dodi, dosi, right? Well, we have pretty typical subjunctive endings that are contracted with the omicron. Again, same thing, right? And no reduplication and no augment. Why is there no augment on those if they're aorist?
Because it's not indicative.
Close. Not indicative. Okay, so augment only occurs in the past tense of the indicative mood. So if you have an imperfect indicative, or if you have an aorist indicative, then you have an augment. You might say that the augment indicates a past tense time kind of feature, right? Because you get outside the indicative and the aorist doesn't have a time significance in and of itself, does it? And you get outside the indicative and you don't get to have an imperfect. So something with a past time significance in Greek will have an augment on it. So that means past tense of the indicative mood, imperfect and aorist. If you get outside the indicative mood, then we're going to see an augment. So that's why you have these forms as we see them there. Then the imperative, das, which is probably where Bill Gates got his idea when he was probably taking Greek, I imagine. Das, dato, date, dato san. So we're used to sas, sas, sato, sate, sato san. So that's a little bit different. What we're having here is second aorist forms, aren't we? All right, and the participle, same sort of endings as we had for the present, only without the reduplication. So you see why it's so important that you understand that principle. That's a key principle for being able to parse and recognize the tense. It's all in the reduplication. Some people think it's all in the O, it's all in the reduplication. Right. Iota reduplication for what tense? Epsilon reduplication for perfect tense. Overstock.com, isn't that commercial?
Yeah.
See, that's pretty good. It makes it stick in your head, doesn't it? All right, any questions on those me verbs? All right, irregular adjectives. They're not all that irregular, really. Paulus is irregular because in the middle two case forms, genitive and dative, in the singular and, well, how do you describe it? Just take it, well, there's a better way to describe it, all right? And I guess that's the way the book describes it as I remember it. In the nominative and accusative, masculine and neuter, you only get one lambda. The rest of the time you get two lambdas, all right? Well, we can deal with that. That's not a big deal. Similar thing with megos, megale, and mega. Sometimes it's megaloo, megalo, megon. See, so same word, just formed a little bit differently. But the endings, very happily, are very similar. Megos is kind of an odd form, but that's okay. Okay, so any questions on those irregular adjectives? It's pretty straightforward, really, isn't it? Wow, so there's a chapter.
I think we know at least the main forms.
Yeah, probably, huh? Isn't that something?
I think we should.
Well, hopefully you've forgotten them and you can remember them again.
Yeah.
Oh,
Believe me.
there's something I forgot and I ran across the other night and I don't know and I couldn't find where it was in the book. What are those where is it? Those words that they only have two different endings? Like,
Two, termination.
yeah, like
adjective,
they
for
should
example.
have three, like masculine, feminine, neuter, but instead it's only two of them.
The masculine and feminine take the same form.
Yeah, what is that?
Two, termination, adjective, maybe.
They're adjectives?
Well, there are adjectives that are two terminations, there are other things that are two terminations too.
Mhm.
In other words, they only have two sets of endings, termination and ending. Kind of like the
Okay.
terminal at the airport. Why they call it a terminal, that's a little scary to me.
I was looking at Ionios, yeah, because Ionios, Ionion, and so I didn't know how to, I think it was doing something, I needed it to be feminine, and I didn't know if it was going to be the same.
Yeah, same form as the masculine.
Okay.
No distinction. Yeah, good point. Okay,
Oh, and is the third declension? Or does
What?
it just depend
this is what third declension.
on how it's declined, or how it's, yeah,
No, I mean, some third declension adjectives are two termination. Is that what you're asking?
I guess, I don't know.
Not all of them, and not all the two termination things I don't think are necessarily third declension either.
Okay. Okay, no.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it can happen in any declension, a two-termination.
Yeah, theoretically, it does it. I think it does. I think it does happen outside of the third declension. I think it does, but I'm on shaky ground there.
Yeah, I just got lost. I was trying to do, I think it was eternal life. I was trying to do Ionios feminine, and then I needed it to be like genitive or something, and I didn't have that, and I didn't know it.
Yeah. Well, it is feminine. It's just the same form as the masculine.
Yeah.
Ambiguous form, I guess you could say.
Would it be Ionian,
IONU.
IOU.
Yeah, all right, let's do the odd numbered ones in this chapter of the New Testament. And the first one of English to Greek. Okay. Now, vocabulary on page 177. You get that? The odd ones in the New Testament section for homework, and first one in the English to Greek.
Let's do the second one this time instead of the first.
You'd rather do the second one?
It just looks shorter. How about the third one? Yeah.
Yeah, but the first one has fruit in it.
Ooh, that's true.
You know fruit
Yeah,
right
but the
away.
third one has joy.
Well.
I'm gonna do the third one anyway. No, wait, third.
You don't just go ahead and do them all anyway, even though I always tell you to do one?
I in my head.
In your head.
I, you
Okay, vocabulary on page 177. Say the word after me. Apalumi
Apalumi.
or apaluo.
Or apalluo.
Now that one gets to be a me verb or an omega verb depending on how it feels at the moment. And it means the same thing. I destroy, I loose. Afiemi.
Afiemi.
All right, very good. As you'll see as you read this chapter, I know you read these chapters, the stem of that word is epsilon, right? And the iota is there for reduplications, and the off part is apa, the preposition, so this is a compound verb. You see that? So when you see afiemi, notice that epsilon, the iota that is in afiemi is the iota reduplication. So if you see afiemi, what tense does it have to be? Okay, if you see afiemi and it's not a present tense, what's going to be missing? Iota. Very good. All right. So it's going to take a different form. We'll see them listed. Deknumi and deknuo. I show, point out, explain, prove. Here's one. Haste me a hen. Haste me a hen. One. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Here's one. Hendiatus. You know what a hendiatus is?
Single something.
Well, a hendiatus is a yeah.
Repeating the same one again.
Well, yeah, close. A hendiatus is a literary device. It literally means 1 through 2. Hen, dia, it. 1 through 2. So if I said he failed because of his anger and malice. It could be that anger and malice are hendiatus. 2 words to describe one characteristic. And so you see that in the Bible sometimes. So let's not go off too hard on, that these are 2 separate things sometimes when we're seeing a hendiatus, especially in poetry and maybe even in the Old Testament and Psalms, right? If we start making preaching and theological points that separate 2 things when they're literally, what's the word? Literarily, thank you. Literarily a hendiatus, we're making a mistake, aren't we? Okay, let's see. Epitithemi means I place upon. So that's a compound word with epi and tithemi. Loipos, the remaining, the rest, the others. Hoi, never mind. Hoi polloi, that's a different thing. This kind of means that, the rest of the people, similar thing. But Medes, Medemia, Meden. No one, nothing. So you can see that's from May and De and haste me a hen. Right? Ude spudamia uden. That's from de and haste me a hen. Means the same thing, no one, nothing. One's going to be used with the indicative and one's going to be used outside the indicative. Which one? You decide. All right, prostithemi. Increase, continue. And then finally, tithemi. I place, I put, I appoint. Where do we get our word thesis? All right, so the principal parts of tithemi, theso, etheka, tetheka, watch that. See? Tethemai and etethane. Now, what do you think the stem of tithemi is? Theta epsilon. Right? So, watch our reduplication because etheka and tetheka sound an awful lot alike, look an awful lot alike, but the rule applies, doesn't it? If you have an iota reduplication, you're in the present system. If you have epsilon reduplication, you're in a perfect tense. If you have no reduplication, aoristic tenses, future or aorist. The good thing is the future endings look real familiar, so you'll be able to distinguish between the future and the aorist pretty easily. Goes through these endings, it's pretty much the same as didomi. You have a different kind of contraction because you have an epsilon vowel that's contracting with these endings. So they look a little different, but it's the same principle. So you can go through and kind of look at that and see what's happening. This is one of those things where you have to relax. If you just relax a little bit and don't tense up and you remember the rule, about reduplication, and you just let the endings, sort of float around in your head, kind of like a film script. They just come up one at a time. That looks like that. I think that's what that's going to be. You can pretty much probably figure it out. If you got the tense, right? If you say, well, I know this is either aorist or future, and I know the future endings, the regular present endings with a sigma and or a thase, sort of thing for passive. You can if you can rule out future, then you're looking at aorist. If you don't rule out future, you're looking at future, right? So by the time you do that, you're thinking of aorist endings, and if you just sort of let yourself feel it, you're probably going to get it, right? Perfect endings, present endings, again, missy, menta, ossi, that same sort of situation there, right? Look at paragraph 211, the verb aphiemi. You can learn about how that's working. Principal parts, aphiemi, that's present. Notice what is, I'm missing in most of the other ones. Apheso is going to be future, iota is gone. Apheka, another kappa first aorist, iota is gone. Apheka, iota is back, but not as reduplication, is it? It would have to come before the epsilon for it to be reduplication. So here we just have kind of a diphthong created from that epsilon stem that we have. So yeah, iota is there. It's a little confusing, but not as reduplication. See why it's not a reduplication? It's not a iota reduplication. It's in the wrong spot to be reduplication. It's got to come before the stem, and it doesn't. Aphemi, same thing there, and phethane. So what's going on with these things? Remember, augment comes after the prepositional prefix, right? So the alpha is not going to be augmented, is it? It's going to come between the alpha phi and the epsilon. Well, the odd thing is, you can see the apheso, we can see that epsilon lengthened in the aorist active, right? And we can kind of see, I'm sorry, that's the future, which totally disproves my point. It's really difficult to, let's just say it really is difficult to see the augment in this. You don't see it in the aorist passive either. But I really don't think it's all that difficult to deal with when you know what's going on and see what's happening. All right, the verb apalumi, or the verb apaluo, and daknumi, daknuo, it just gets to choose depending on what it feels like at the moment. I think you can look at that and learn what you need to from there. You can see the forms of hes, mia, hen in the masculine. Hes, henos, heni, henna. How come in the masculine there are only 4 forms instead of 8 that we're used to? Yeah. Yeah, there's not a plural of one. One is by nature singular, so you don't need a plural of one. So, hes, henos, heni, henna, mia, mias, mia, mian, hen, henos, heni, hen. So haste sort of follows the third declension, sigma, as, e, a, doesn't it? And then mia follows the first declension, and hen follows the third declension. Okay. Any questions on those things? These are pretty easy chapters, huh?
Good.
I mean, there's stuff to know in there with the me verbs. You know, you have to live with those a little while to get comfortable with them, right? But nothing to totally blow you away, I don't think, in those. So let's do the odd again of the New Testament and number 1 of the English to Greek for next time, and we'll be good to go. So next time we'll do lesson 30.
What do you want us to translate?
Out of 1 John.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you in a minute. This is the homework.
Here's some more.
Adam, did you give me double homework?
I emailed it to you last week.
Oh, I remember that. I just saw that today. What did I do with that?
Emailed me back and said thank you.
Oh, cool. Question is that good in the grade thing? Note to self. We'll take care of it. Okay.
Don't worry, we'll be counting to you.
All right, let's see, we're finishing chapter 2 today, so if you would do, for next time, well, let's see. Well, we have 3 more times together, don't we?
After tonight, yeah. I have a suggestion.
Sure.
Would you be willing to cut down on the sentences if we did like the whole chapter? Sentences from the chapter, from the book?
Yeah. I guess we could do 3, 4, 5, couldn't we? So next time you could do all of chapter 3, and but that's too much if we do the odd, you're saying, huh?
Like maybe like every 5?
Starting with,
Start with number 11, I just knew it would be good one. But only the ones that are visible.
I mean, the main thing is you want us to be translating that.
Well, yeah, but these are out of the New Testament too.
That's true, that's true. That's
Well, what do you think is good? What do you think we ought to do with this? Every third one? Huh?
Number 1, 2, and 3.
no.
1, 2, and 3. Well, what do you got? You got 12 sentences there. So if you did every third one, that's 4 sentences.
That's good. Every third one?
And on the next one, lesson 29, if we did, well, you only have 3 sentences if you did every third one on that. So let's do every third one on both of them. So that's only 7 sentences. So that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fair.
You say every third one, what would the numbers be, 1?
No, there's 3.
3, 6, 9, 12.
3, 6, 9, 12, and 3, 6, 9 in the second one. Yeah, that's fairly light on that, and that's all right, because you'll just do the whole chapter 3, and then we'll do chapter 4, then we'll do chapter 5, and then I will read to you, maybe if we have time, we'll have time. I will read to you, as we have time, 2nd and 3rd John. John B and John G. All right.
When will you give us the final exam?
I will give you the final exam on the last night of our being together. And the final exam will be closed book, open mind. And I would like you, I would probably want you to carve out a period of time where you can do it in one sitting. And what you're going to be able to have in front of you is an unmarked Greek New Testament. And so with your unmarked Greek New Testament, not including the use of a dictionary, I guess these, shall answer man Greek New Testaments that we have with the stuff in the bottom, I guess we have to live with that, don't we? But, so that's what you'll have, and so you'll have the test, and I will give you some vocabulary, potentially. I will give you some endings, potentially, put down. I will give you parsing, potentially, to put down. And I will give you translation that could potentially come from your exercises that you're doing, or 1 John. So that is what we will do. And probably there will be more weight put on translation and parsing from 1 John than anything else.
What percentage they grade? Do you tell us already?
What does the syllabus say? Does the syllabus indicate? I probably fed something in my grade program at home.
No, it doesn't say. It just gives the course grading, like what equals an A.
Yeah. So what we have is
Quizzes, daily work, class participation, and this test.
quizzes, daily work, class participation, and the test. I'll probably make, if I make the final twice as much as the other stuff, then that means that the other 3 each get to be 20% of your grade, and the final gets to be 40% of your grade. Is that a bad thing?
What if we don't do enough in that?
Yeah.
You want an 80%?
80, 40, and 40.
I tried that, and that grade program won't let me do stuff like that. It's an odd thing, it insists on things adding up to 100%.
Must not be a postmodern grading
No. Well, the bottom line is, what are you going to come out of here with, right?
Not just that, but where we go.
Not just that, but where you go, but if you don't come out with something, you're not going to go anywhere with it. So, yeah, that sounds like a good way to do it. But looking at y'all's performance, it doesn't seem to me that you have that much to worry about. I will.
Unless we freeze.
I will.
Testing is hard. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
For some of us.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I've usually got what we're doing currently down, and I don't know anything else before that. That's usually.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good because you need to forget this stuff.
Yeah, but we need to remember it again for the test.
See, that's where we're helping you, because forgetting it's only half of the trip. You've got to, it's a round trip. You've got to get it back again. You got to take that round trip a few times. So thing to do is, you gotta start studying for the final now, right? You can't wait until that week, you gotta review. And that's the thing, when you're learning Greek, it's all about review. You know, you gotta understand the concepts, you know, and that's challenging, but, you know, it's all, you know, it's probably 80% review. I'm still reviewing. I'm still reviewing. You know?
I don't know that we're only doing one per week.
Oh, one chapter, yeah. I mean,
That's
there's not
a lot more time than-
there's not a whole lot more left to learn in those 3 chapters. You know, this is I'm seeing. It's just stuff. You know? Just stuff. You know, there aren't any more big. Well, I could be wrong, but as I peruse it, I don't see any too many more at least big sets of endings or anything else like that to learn. You know. So it's a matter of review, and the translating helps us review too. Please get in the habit. It's tough when you're trying to get stuff done, but please get in the habit of reviewing as you go. As you're translating in 1 John, for example, you know, if you get stuck on something, you don't know what it is. You know, why didn't I know those endings? I better go back and learn those endings, right? If you're struggling with, the perfect middle passive endings and you know it because you're translating and you can't get it right off, take a moment, review those endings. Because that's an indication that you got gold. You've got gold within your reach right there because you have forgotten it. See, that's half the trick. Memorize it again, and there you go. But if you can look at the text, here's the best learning environment. I mean, this is Miracle Grow potting soil for learning right here, right? If you're looking at the text and you see something and you can't get it, but you sit there and think about it for a few minutes until you dredge it out of your memory, and you've dredged it up, and you've brought it to memory without having to look it up. That's huge. That's probably like forgetting it 3 or 4 times and memorizing it again, because you've just taken that thing by doing that and planted that thing in Miracle Grow potting soil right there, and it's going to bloom now. Twice the size of the other thing. So, as you're going through, don't make it your goal really just to get this stuff out of 1 John translated. Make it your goal for this to be that kind of learning experience, so that you have time to sit here for 5 minutes if you have to, and struggle with that form. What is it? And as you're struggling with that form, you're reviewing all kinds of things in your mind. No, that's not it. If you can pull it out, bam, you've got it nailed. So don't be too quick to help one another. Force one another to sit and think about it. Hopefully you're studying together. Force the other guy to struggle with something. It's all in the struggle in some sense, right? So I think you'll do good. I am very confident in you. And, I can see how you're translating all that stuff. Unless you're just reading from notes you have there or something funny like that. So you can write in your Greek. You can do whatever you want because it's America, right? But if you are writing in your New Testament, parsings and stuff like that, you will have to acquire or buy or something one that you haven't done that with for the test. And I strongly discourage you from doing that anyway. If you want to put references or something in there, or write notes, theological notes or whatever, that doesn't really matter. But if you're writing aorist over words or something like that, you're just hurting yourself at that point.
Can I use my interlinear for this?
No, and no computers either, by the way. And no New Testament's on a computer. It's got to be in the book. Books are still good for something, if nothing more than just testing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Not related exactly to this, but the course that you'll have teach in the fall, it's like advanced grammar. Is there a text that you use for that?
I have used a couple different texts in the past, and Dr. House knows of another text that he likes, so he's going to get me an examination copy of that. I'll see if I like it. But we're focusing on morphology here. What do you think morphology means? Forms, right? With some grammar, because you have to have some grammar. The basics of grammar, parts of speech, subject, verbs and objects and direct objects and things like that. Right? But then you go into the more advanced kinds of syntax. Now we're kind of focusing on words here. What's the vocabulary word? What does a first aorist active indicative second singular look like? What's that word look like? The forms, right? Next class, you start focusing on sentences. And so you're saying, how does this word function in this sentence? Right? And then the next class, you start really focusing on paragraphs, in a sense. You're saying, okay, what is the meaning of this? Exegesis. I'm guessing. I don't even know what the next class is. I'm not totally sure how they have it arranged yet, but typically that's what you do. But you're just taking bigger units of thought all the time, and the bigger your unit of thought, the more interpretation you're doing. And then you start doing things like diagramming sentences, I imagine, which you may do in the next class or the class after.
So which ones I think are in the running for the grammars we're going to use?
I don't remember the one that Dr. House mentioned, but I'm used to have used and was taught under Dana and Manty, and I have used Brooks and Weinberry.
I think you mentioned Wallace.
I think it's Wallace is the one. Do you know Wallace?
Is
that good?
He's DTS's guy. I heard the green one was good, and the purple abridged one is not good.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
That's what.
The green one's good. It's the same thing, but the purple's abridged. Okay.
John Niema told me that he gets a lot more theological in his abridged one.
Oh, really?
As far as describing grammar and stuff. And so he says it's a little bit dangerous.
So John Emo?
John.
All right. Well, it would be interesting to look at that and see which one I end up with, the green one or the purple.
So, but he said as long as it's written in big font in the purple one, you're okay. Just stay away from whatever's in the little font. So I don't know.
Oh, that's
He
pretty
was
funny.
just making a joke, but.
So we might end up dispensationalist or something. That was a joke.
Right.
You're gonna get saved.
We are dispensationalists, aren't we?
Yeah, we
Are
are.
we dispensationalists? Okay, good. All right. Sometimes I'm not sure what we are. All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, we are on verse 15 of chapter 2. We better fly. We only have 50 minutes. Anybody like to read verse 15?
I'll read it.
Okay, Stacy, chop that baby up for us.
Love not the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him.
Okay, very good. Do not love the world, neither the things in the world. If anyone, tis, what kind of word is tis? Not a relative pronoun, it's a pronoun. Anyone.
Indefinite.
Indefinite pronoun, very good. How do you know it's not an interrogative pronoun?
It doesn't have the actual.
Doesn't have the accent on the first iota. That's right. So if anyone loves the world, what mood do you think agapa is in?
It's in the, aorist.
Subjunctive?
It's in a subjunctive mood. It's a present active subjunctive. How do we know it's subjunctive? Apart from the ending. Eon and tis. Those are both indefinites, aren't they? And so we can't be in the indicative there. We have to be in the subjunctive. All right, now, me agapate. Now, how would you parse agapates, Stacy? By the way, while you're thinking about that, let me tell you that I'll begin next week grading you on your translation and parsing of 1 John. So that by the time we get to the final, comfort will reign.
The translating on paper, you mean, the homework that we turn in? Or is that
Maybe
on
it could be on paper, of course, it could be just verbally, as you're reading.
Does that mean you want us to provide the parsing on our piece?
Well, you don't have to do
As
that.
long as I have it translated, right?
As long as you, well, yeah, but as long as you know how to parse everything. Is there an augment?
No.
No. Is there now we have, this is a contract verb, isn't it? Agapao. So do we have a lengthening of the contract vowel? Lengthening of the contract vowel, the alpha, agapao. The alpha that comes before that omega is the contract vowel. Do we have a lengthening of that thing to an eta? Pardon?
I would say yes.
There's an eta?
No, there's not.
Okay, so we don't have a lengthening of the contract vowel. Instead we have what? Contraction, right?
Right.
Well, if we have contraction, we have to be in the present system, don't we? Because if we have a contract verb, when we get outside the present system, we're going to have potentially augment, but we're going to have a lengthening of the contract vowel before the temporal infix. So we don't have a temporal infix, we don't have lengthening of the contract vowel, we have contraction, so this is a present, right? Could be imperfect, but we don't have augment, so it's not imperfect. Okay, so this is a present.
Imperative?
It's an imperative. Present active imperative. Now, what are my present active imperative endings? Eto, ete, etosan. Now, ete is what we have here, and that epsilon and alpha are contracted, right? But that ete is also an indicative ending. How do I know this is imperative and not indicative? The may takes me outside the indicative mood, so it has to be an imperative. Okay, may with the present subjunctive, how could you translate that? Talk about that in the grammar, with the present subjunctive.
Do not love.
Do not love the world, that's okay, you can translate it that way, but you can also translate it what?
Stop.
Stop.
I was gonna ask about that.
Yeah, it could be, according to the context, it could be assuming that this action is happening and it needs to stop. And I think that's true here. I think the best translation of this is stop loving the world. Now, who among us doesn't from time to time love the world? Yeah. So I would be comfortable with that translation. Stop loving the world, neither the things in the world. Ta, of course, is an accusative because it's another direct object of loving, right?
Can I make a comment?
Uh-huh.
I struggle with that because I wanted to translate it that way because that was the rule, but it didn't seem consistent with what John had just said about these people. You know,
All right. Now, well,
you've overcome, you're strong and all of this,
Okay.
and then, but you guys are loving the world, so stop doing that.
yeah, that's true. But then he also says if we say that we have no sin, we make him a liar.
But they weren't saying anything. I mean, you know, he's putting them up. He's encouraging them. He said, "You guys are this. Now stop loving the world." And I guess it just didn't seem like, I struggle with that, translating it that way, even though I
Well,
know that was a
yeah.
present act.
It doesn't have to be translated that way. There is the derivative sense there, no matter what, right? But, people and situations and behavior is complex. You can be an overcomer and still sometimes love the world. You might say that that's a pretty interesting definition of sin in general. Lots of definitions of sin, but what is sin? Loving the world. So are they sinning? We know, biblically and theologically that, yeah, they're sinning, these people. But, you could make an argument that it's better just to say, do not love the world, or don't keep on loving the world, or something like that. But
I mean, if it's a present active imperative like that, with may, should it always be translated with that idea?
it doesn't have to be. Context might not allow it, and maybe you're arguing that this context doesn't allow it. And you're making a valid argument. But when you get to questions like that, most of the time things can be argued on two sides or even more than two sides. And so you're putting things in a balance, right? And how do you? That's why interpretation is just that, interpretation. All right, that's
okay.
a great question. Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very, very good question.
I think from the aspect of a father toward the son, you're going to want to be a voice of encouragement, which would influence his a teachable response. So if you're going to say stop loving, then you're finding out if they're teachable or not, and what they have to do next to it.
Mm-hmm. All right, now here's an interesting statement in the second half of this verse. If anyone loves the world, now we think of John 3:16. For God so loved the what? World. What word is that in John 3:16? Cosmos. It's the same word. Does it mean the same thing? No. He's defining it differently here, isn't he? And so we need to be careful about that. But if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Now, whether you translate this stop love the world or do not love the world, John is in any case seeing that these believers could love the world, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't be telling them not to, right? But if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So, it's interesting. I think that those are present tenses. I think the idea is while you're loving the world, while you're doing that, the love of the Father is not in you. Now, here's one of those next term questions, right? Love of the Father. Now, the Father is a genitive here, isn't it? Okay?
Father's love. Father's love.
Now, that's one option.
Or
Love for the Father.
Love for the Father. That's right. That's right. And so when you have a noun of action, love is a noun, right? But it's a noun of action. There's also a verb form of love, right? So when you have a noun of action modified by a genitive, you very often have the question, is it a subjective genitive or an objective genitive? That is the Father the one doing the love of the Father, Father's loving, or is the Father the one who's being loved? Love for the Father, you might say. No, we have to. That's an interpretive question. So that's one of the kinds of genitives. Now we've learned genitive, and we've learned a few kinds: genitive of possession, genitive of time. We've seen. But here's another one: a subjective genitive or objective genitive. Which one is it? That's not terribly clear. I think if you look at John, I think John argues that we love because he first loved us, right? So I think this might be a case where it's unclear almost purposefully because both are true. Both are true. Now, a text really generally speaking, doesn't mean two things, especially not two opposite things. But, you know, there's a way to work with language so that you create purposeful ambiguity, right? So if that's what's happening here, certainly if we're loving the world, then we're not showing love to the Father at the same time, right? But how is it that we can show love to the Father in the first place? We love because He first loved us. So God's love is somehow not in us as it would otherwise be. You see what I mean? So I think you make an argument for both of them, right?
We're still in that parallel with the upper room discourse. I think it makes a lot of sense to take it as love for the Father.
I think if I were pushed and had to choose one, that's the one I would choose. But I think you can still go ahead and make an argument. If you're not loving God, then you're not responding to God's love properly either.
Right. That doesn't necessarily mean that He's not loving you. Just
No. Well, and we wouldn't say that. Wouldn't say that God's side of it has changed at all.
But even in the upper room discourse, though, there is a certain aspect of God's love that we experience when we love Him. And so I can see how there could be an ambiguity here.
Yeah, I mean, if I were pushed, I'd say it's an objective genitive, right? But even if it is an objective genitive in John's theology, you know, my love and God's love for me are just really tied together in my ability. So there's something broken down in that whole love thing if I'm loving the world. You can't do both of those things at once. All right, verse 16. Okay, I can go ahead.
Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes, and boasting of life, is not out of the Father, but is out of the world.
Okay, very good. All right, because pawn. Now we've had pas upon, and here's pawn, right? That's the very form. It's the neuter nominative form of that word, which means everything. So, and pon, ta, kind of go together. Every thing. Remember we had ta, plural, the things just a moment ago? So here we have everything. So, because everything in the world. Now, what kind of locative is that? In the world. Is it locative of place, or is it locative of sphere? I think the import of it is locative of sphere, but the sphere is tied to place too, isn't it? Right? And it's where we are. And we use it that way. I just realized it's where we are. It's where we are figuratively, but it's also where we are literally. We are in the world. We're not in the world in the same way, you know, as Paul would use it, but we're here, aren't we? You know,
So there are things, though, that are in the world. In the locative sense, that we are supposed to love.
that are okay. That we're supposed to what?
Love.
All right. Like what?
Like you.
Okay, like people.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
People, the church.
Okay, the church, that's
God.
people. God.
Yeah.
Yes, God's here.
Yeah, that's good.
One another.
People.
Although
Christians. Yeah, people. What else?
The Bible.
The Bible. What else?
my God.
Nope.
No.
Answer is nothing else. Those are the three things we're allowed to love. People,
God, people, and the Bible.
God, people, and the Bible. That's right. Those three things that are
Yeah.
Now we happen to be here. People are in the world. Yeah.
But I mean, also, like, we can love spiritual things also that are in the world, like the church gathering. You know, that's a spiritual thing. I mean, it all has to do with people.
It has to do with people. Yeah.
Right.
The world here is used in somewhat of a metaphorical sense. It's really talking about, as they say, the world system, isn't it? Right? But we're not using the word world because it's unconnected with the literal where of it. Right? There's a reason that it's not, you know, the heavenly, right? I mean, when you're talking about the heavenlies, you know, that has a certain meaning. You know, so the where has a significance that gives rise to the metaphorical use of this term. Right? Cosmos. So everything in the world, and what is that? he's going to categorize it. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride, arrogance, boastful pride of life. That's interesting. There are a couple of words for life that you would find in the New Testament. One is zoe, one is bios. And it seems to me, these are synonyms, but it seems to me that zoe emphasizes the life principle, and bios emphasizes more of the physical kind of life. Now, animals have both scripturally, zoe and bios. But I think here, what this is talking about is the physical trappings of life. The boastful pride or the arrogance that goes along with the physical trappings of life. What kind of car you can drive, or house you can live in, or what kind of food you can eat, or clothes you can wear, those sorts of things. Yes.
I have a question. We only have quite a lot to do with this, but is the Septuagint, is that considered inspired?
No. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
It's a translation.
Okay. But it wouldn't be considered like.
It's highly useful, however. For us to, it's our linguistic bridge to the Old Testament, between the Greek New Testament and Hebrew Old Testament. It's very useful to see how they're using Greek in relation to Hebrew words. But no, the Septuagint is not inspired, in my view. And in evangelical view, I think it's very fair to say.
Except where it's quoted in the New Testament. Right?
Well, I don't think it's inspired there either.
You know?
Well, it is by the time it gets in the New Testament, but it's
Right,
not.
that's what I mean.
It's not in and of itself inspired, but it is inspired
But it is when
as
it's in
part of
the
the context
Right.
of the New Testament. That still, however, doesn't mean, I think, that the Septuagint translation is necessarily accurate,
Even in those places where it's quoted.
even in those places where it's quoted. If you look at Hebrews chapter 2, quoting Psalm 8, I think, you see an example of that. The Septuagint has, you made him a little lower than the angels, I believe, which goes along with the point of Hebrews at that point. The Hebrew text says you made him a little lower than God, Elohim. So what's happening there? I don't think, just because Hebrews quotes it that way, that gives us the right reading of the Old Testament text as being angels.
Right.
We don't think it is.
But it would probably
So
be,
there's a long discussion with
the
that.
technical critical apparatus of the VHS document, it would make a note, probably in and of itself also.
Now, some people would argue that that term can be used to describe angels as, kind of,
Gods.
but don't think that's what it means.
S. Lewis Johnson's got a good book on that.
Who?
S. Lewis Johnson.
Yeah, no,
About
that
how the New Testament authors use the Old Testament.
quite familiar with that book. No, but not much I remember today, but at one point I knew it. Yes. Earl Ellis is another good one on the use of the Old Testament.
Who's that?
Earl Ellis. Earl Ellis, actually.
Would you say that the list that you use there is like the Hendias, except it's the three and not two things, or are those three separate things?
Well, in some sense they're the same thing because it's all the world, right? But I think he separates them out for a reason. Does this remind you of anything? Have you ever heard this connected with the temptation of Eve?
In the temptation of Jesus.
Yeah, and the temptation of Jesus. He responds with 3 scriptures, doesn't he? You remember the temptation of Eve? What did she see? Looked good, good for food, and
make
desirable
one
to make
wise.
one wise. What's wisdom, by the way, in the Old Testament? The ability to apply knowledge so as to be successful, right? So the boastful pride of the stuff of life, success, right? Pride of success, basically. All right, so that's the world. That's not sourced in the Father, but sourced in the world. The source of those things. Ek, right? Ek with the ablative, I would say, ablative case, or the genitive of source. See, 5 case, 8 case, depending on what you want to do. It's all just how you describe it, To me, I'll skip a step. You know, I'll call it an ablative of source instead of an ablative genitive of source, but whatever. All right, so that's very good. Verse 17, who'd like to do that? Okay.
In the world, being disappeared, passed away.
All right, yeah, all right, that's good. Yeah, the your little note down at the bottom of the page, parago, I pass by, I go away, but in the passive, which is what we have here, to pass away or disappear. So it's pass away.
Okay. And the last of it, but one doing the will of God remains into the ages.
Okay, good. That's literal or forever. Really? How would you parse poion?
I translate it as a participle,
Indeed.
present active,
Mm-hmm.
first person.
No, that wouldn't apply to a participle. Yeah, present active participle,
What else are you looking for?
gender number case.
Masculine singular.
Yep, that's gender and number with case.
I want to say gender.
Okay, you're going to get some help by the article. The article,
Oh, yeah. No.
nominative, that's right. And plus the function of it in the sentence. The one doing the will of God remains forever. So that's the subject of the sentence, right? So, you know, it's nice if you just know poion is present active participle masculine noun with singular. That's where we want to get. But, you know, like if you're taking a final or something, you know, and you're looking at that, well, let things help you. Let the context help you, right? Well, we've got an article with it. So, boy, that's going to help me out. The article with it tells me it's looking like a participle. It could be an infinitive, but I'm not looking, it's not looking like an infinitive to me. So even the article with it helps me identify it as a participle, but it sure helps me with the gender, number, and case. And then if I, you know, how did I translate it? Well, the one doing the will of God remains forever. What slot in the sentence did it take? It takes the subject slot, right? So what case is going to be taking the subject slot? Nominative. So, you know, allow those things, if you get stuck on something, you know, allow those things to help you. Is what you're doing. All right, that's very nice. Who would like to do 18? Well, I think that'd be all right.
Forgot what the top was. Is that? Just that. Children, it is the last hour. And just as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming,
Mm-hmm.
and now the Antichrist, what would you say?
Doesn't it make you just want to jump up and down in your chair to know we just learned this and now we can use it? Halloy.
Also,
Well, think of words like polyester or polygamy.
and now many
There you go.
Antichrists have come.
Yes, that's right. I don't know if we've had Hawken or not, but it means whence, which is a great old word that we don't even know what whence means. But whence means from where.
Okay. Okay. From where we know that. Oh, okay. I think okay. From where we know that the last hour.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, or if you want to be, you know, older English, whence we know that it is the last hour. Might be better English to say from which we know.
From which we know.
that it is the last hour. Okay, very good. Now, back up in the first line, the word after the kathos, akusate. How would you parse that?
That would be, let's see, Eris,
Aorist, right?
third person,
Second person.
second person, plural,
Plural.
so we'll do that last.
Okay, so we have aorist. We need the voice and the mood. Aorist.
Yeah. Or not, indicative.
It's indicative. So now you got aorist, something indicative.
It's, reactive.
Yes, it would be. So you're right. Aorist active indicative. 2P from akuo. I hear. So just as you heard that Antichrist is coming, and now many Antichrists have come, what tense is geganasin?
That would be duplication too.
Well, no, the other one didn't have a duplication. The other one had augment.
This
This has a duplication.
so that, let's see.
Many Antichrists have come.
That's, yeah, that's perfect.
So yes, that's right. That's perfect. So the Antichrist being here tell us that it is the last hour. How could it have been the last hour in John's time, and yet it was nearly 2,000 years ago, 1,900 years ago? You know. How could John say that it's the last hour?
The millennial kingdom has already come and gone.
I don't know what denomination that makes you. But barely Christian. Yeah. How in the world
We
could he
didn't
say
screen him well enough when we hired him.
We're in your years.
Oh, that's right. I inherited you.
Would never let me in.
How do we know it's the last hour? I mean, is this wrong? Was he wrong about that? By a few thousand years?
Living in the last hour.
We're living in the last hour. But in this sense, it's no more the last hour today than it was then. In my view, the New Testament writers view the eschaton as having broken through already for the church. And apparently, John, by seeing this, takes a similar view as that expressed maybe differently by Paul. But Paul has the concept of the already, not yet, right? So we enjoy we enjoy certain aspects of the eschaton today, and really we suffer certain aspects of the eschaton as well. And one of the aspects of the eschaton is what? Antichrist. Do we already have Antichrist? Yes. So some of the struggles of the eschaton are with us, and the blessings of, or some at least of the blessings of the eschaton are with us. What's the theme verse? The theme verse of the book of Ephesians. It's Ephesians 1:3. What does that say to us? Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies in Christ. We have every spiritual blessing in Christ. So that means the blessings of the eschaton that are spiritual are already ours. Right? So in that sense, it's already the last hour. It's already the last days, because there are certain aspects of the last days that are present. Not all the aspects of the last days, but some aspects of the last days are present. Right? And that's why the church operates under the new covenant. The new covenant is for whom? Israel. Look at Jeremiah 31 and quoted in Hebrews 8. What does that say? I will make a covenant with the house of Israel. I will make a covenant with Judah. Very clear. The new covenant is to be made with Israel. And when does that new covenant come into force? In some sense, at least, the millennial kingdom of Christ with the Jews, right? But the church is under the new covenant. Different new covenant? No. Same new covenant. But that new covenant is a covenant of the last days. It's an eschatological covenant. I don't believe it'll be fulfilled entirely until the eternal state. But that new covenant is a covenant of the eschaton, but the church enjoys the blessings of it ahead of time. Spiritually, not physically, spiritually. I think it's kind of interesting to think that of the Old Testament, God emphasized what? Material blessing. Mosaic covenant. If you obey me, I will bless you. What did he mean by that? In the land, materially, good harvest, all that kind of stuff, right? In the New Testament, we are already blessed with all the spiritual blessings of the heavenlies in Christ. So Old Testament, material blessing. New Testament, spiritual blessing. Where do those two things come together? Millennial kingdom of Christ, both spiritual and material blessing. So that in some sense the Old Testament's a picture of the millennium, in some sense the New Testament's a picture of the millennium, but the millennium becomes a picture of heaven, right? Because is the ultimate fulfillment come in the millennium? No. It comes in heaven. So in that sense, we're in the last hour. We're in the last days. Because we are, no matter how long this lasts, the church enjoys last day kinds of blessing, and the church enjoys, in some sense, last days kinds of problems here and by Christ. All right, 8:30 or 8 o'clock is approaching. Who's going to be next?
I know going in order in mind, but I've got a word in you that's going to be really difficult. So I'll try.
All right.
Out of us, they went, but they were not out of us.
Okay.
For if they were out of us.
Okay.
And I'm gonna have to guess that this is oblative. Is it oblative?
What? Oh,
This next
ablative?
word?
Yeah, the out of us part?
No, the next word.
Oh, memenekeson?
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't apply to that word. The ablatives are the ek. Ek is a preposition with the ablative. So the ablative would be the hemon part of it. Right?
Okay.
You know, ablative is one of those other cases, right, that has the same
Right.
form as the genitive.
Well, what's the name? I'm thinking of the wrong name then.
Yeah.
Like subjunctive, but stronger. What's the
Oh, optative?
optative? Is this optative? This next word?
I don't think so.
I guess I'm gonna translate it. They would have remained.
Yeah, it's from meno, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, you see the mem, right?
Yeah.
So that's reduplication. Well, it is a hard word. Go ahead.
They would have remained ever with us. So I don't know. About the on.
Oh, the on is just that's going to be. It's oftentimes not translatable, but you kind of translated it in that they would have. You made it
Okay.
indefinite, so it makes things indefinite. So they would have remained with us.
They would have remained with us, but so that it would be made apparent
Okay.
that they were not. Let's see. That they are not
Okay, yeah, very good. That is a hard word. The caisson ending tells me it's a pluperfect, and that's what it
Oh,
is.
that's what it is.
A pluperfect.
The
But
one
normally a
that we
pluperfect will
was-
also have an augment with the reduplication, but this doesn't. So it's kind of odd.
Okay.
So that's what we have, a pluperfect. They would have remained. So that's kind of an odd word, but you did good with the verse. Can you just tell me the tense of ex-aelthon?
Ex-aelthon,
Third word.
is it, perfect,
Uh-uh.
or, imperfect?
Uh-uh.
I don't know.
It's from erchomai. Erchomai, elusomai, aelthon. But it's ex-erchomai, ex-elusomai. Echelus.
Oh, probably second aorist, since it's got a distinction.
Yeah, second aorist. Okay, can you tell me the tense of ason just down the line a little bit?
Let's see, Aeson. Aeson. That's gonna be, is that aorist?
No such thing as an aorist of ami, because ami is a verb of being, which can't happen in an undefined action. Right? So ami is always in a derivative tense.
Amen is always in the business. Okay.
I take it back, 'cause you can have a future of ami, but that's because you have to have a future time thing, but that really is going to push the future to a derivative tense too.
So, yeah, I guess it's gonna have to be imperfect, because it's, well, no, that's probably, is that perfect?
No, it's imperfect.
Imperfect, dang.
Okay, look.
I can't keep them all straight.
Look at toward the end of the second line of that verse. We're going to give you another shot at this.
Okay.
Tell me the mood of phanerothosin. In fact, tell me the tense voice mood.
It's gonna be subjunctive,
Yes?
and,
This is a lot easier if you're not under pressure. Huh?
I guess I'm gonna have to say it's passive,
It is?
and, so I've got tense, voice, and
Well, you need tense.
I need tense, okay, it's gonna be,
The rest of us are on the edge of our seat.
Yes.
Yes, it's aorist, passive, subjunctive. Yes. Okay, very good. All right, great. By the way, since I pulled this out just to check myself, this has been referred to by some students as the Pope. Highly recommend that to you. It's called the Pope. It was called the Pope because it's put out by the Editrice Pontifico Instituto Biblico Roma, the Vatican, I guess, puts this out. And it's called the Pope not only because of that, but also because it's never wrong. And what it does is it goes through.
I got mine.
You got one? Oh, see, and his is red, so that's even better. So he has one. Where'd you get it?
Amazon.
Amazon. Okay.
They said it would take 4 weeks. I ordered it last Tuesday, came today.
Awesome.
How much was it?
There you go.
I think it was 36.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay, way to go. Yours has a better. Yours isn't as floppy as mine, is it?
Yours is used now.
Yeah. Well, here's what it does. This gives you information on sometimes on vocabulary meaning. It gives you information sometimes on parsing, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't give you what you should know, especially as a beginning Greek student. So if you're now through beginning Greek, it doesn't hurt you so much because if you should know it, it's not in here, right?
It'd be like a graduation class.
But I looked up that word. Memenekeson, and it told me two things. It told me it's pluperfect, and and in parentheses it said without the augment. Right? Now, what it didn't tell me was anything else. I had to know it's from Menno, which I could tell.
He tells you that.
Huh?
He tells you that.
What?
No.
Oh, did it tell me Menno too? Okay. Well, I didn't pay attention to that, so I didn't need that. But it doesn't tell me the voice. It doesn't tell me the mood, does it? It doesn't tell me the person and number, any of that kind of stuff, because I should be able to figure that out. Once I have that little bit of hard information, I can figure the rest of it out. Doesn't tell me a meaning either, does it? See, so this is why this is highly recommended, because stuff that's
They would have remained.
huh?
It says they would have remained.
Oh, does it give you that whole thing? I wonder if mine's different. I think
What edition is yours?
yeah, mine's a 93. What edition is yours? Yeah, the Benedictus.
96.
Oh, so you have a better edition. You know, I'm aging. All my stuff is old now. I used to look at my professors and go, man, all their stuff is old. You know, now mine's old.
This one's autographed.
Cool. Which one?
Gregory the Great.
Gregory the Great. Well, okay, I just ignored that stuff. Mine says they would have remained pluperfect without the augment Menno. So I just ignored, I guess, what I already knew. I just looked at what I knew to know. It's cool. It's very good. Highly worth the money because it gives you the right stuff. It doesn't clutter up, but it also takes enough effort to look over and find your verse. It goes verse by verse, and you have to look over and find it. So it takes a little bit of effort. So it's not like it's that easy. The coolest part of the whole thing is just the right size. If you photocopy it right, you can get a front to back thing. Figure that out. That'll take you a while to figure out how to do that. We're going to put 2 copies front to back. But if you do that, you can get just the section you're studying. This is 2nd and 3rd John here, just a few pages. You can just stick that in your Bible, good to go. Now, if you're studying the book of Colossians, you can easily put Colossians on that thing. With your knowledge of beginning Greek in that thing, you should be able to have everything you need to translate the book. So,
Even if it's like Hebrews or like,
well, everything you need to know, but then you got to put it together, and then that's with Hebrews, just bring a New Testament, English New Testament. But in any case, if you want to take a look at mine, maybe Joe will let you look at his.
We've got 0 minutes.
All right, change the tape, please. All right. So the Pope, Amazon.com. All right, we're on verse 20. So Tanner, would you like to do verse 20? How come you got such a short